Hi there, listener, and welcome to the fourth in our series of podcasts covering the best snow sports equipment available for winter 2024. Now, we've already looked at the best skis, ski boots, and ski jackets, and I found these really interesting to record. I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to them. You can catch up with all these episodes anytime, but today we're going to move on to looking at two really important areas of your winter wardrobe: helmets and goggles. Now, before I go on, I'd like to put a shout out for Ellis Brigham. This special episode of the Ski Podcast has been made possible by them. They are the winter sports specialists. They've got 16 shops around the UK, and you can find all the kit you need for this winter. Alternatively, you can just go to their website at ellis-brigham.com, where you can buy online now. My name is Iain Martin, and this series of podcasts would not be possible without my regular guest and equipment expert, Al Morgan. Hi, Al. How are you?
Iain, I'm great, thank you. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm very well. I lose track of the days. I think it's the 4th of January at the moment. We've had so many things going on. People like us who work in the ski industry, get through Christmas and New Year, but working all those days in between as well. I'm looking forward to a bit more routine. I know for yourself, we're coming into a very busy period right now. Al isn't just the equipment expert for the Ski Podcast. You can find his work at the Telegraph and Full Line. He's always testing kit. I wondered if you could just start off by telling us how and when you've tested the products that we are going to talk about today.
Yeah, so looking at helmets and goggles, these are arguably a bit easier to test because whenever I'm going skiing, I can take a helmet or a goggle with me or a variety. And the reason why it's important to take a variety is you need to know that different goggles work with different helmets and vice versa. So yeah, just whenever I'm in the mountains, different products, testing them so I can help people get into the best helmet or goggle for their needs.
Okay, excellent. Well, today we're going to start off with helmets and then move on to goggles. We'll look at the best options for the top, middle and entry points of the market. And we're going to explain some of the key bits of jargon you need to know without going too technical about it. So from the jargon point of view, I wondered if we could start off with helmets. I know you wanted to start with something. It's not really jargon at all. We're talking about the fit of the item.
Yeah, and this is really key. And people may get a bit bored of hearing me talk about fit is king and make sure you try things on. But we've all got different head shapes, and our eyes are all different colors, and they work better with different tints and lenses. So go and try the helmets on. They're not all the same shape. Some are round, some are oval. Goggles aren't all the same shape either. And that lens tint point is really important. You will put a goggle on and you will know if it feels nice and comfortable and relaxed for your eyes. Walk around the shop, have a look around, go and try them on.
Okay, so with that in mind, fit is king. Let's have a look at a few of the key terms we need to know about. One of the things you wanted to talk about and you flagged are the safety standards. And there are a couple of acronyms, abbreviations in relation to those.
Yeah, so North America, then we've got ASTM, so that's their safety standards. I'm not going to go into the different categories and the different numbers, etc. And then in Europe, we have the ENCE number. It's worth noting with ski helmets, when you're in Europe, there's 1077 is the number, but there's two variants. There's A and B. A is essentially the race category, if you want. Full goes all over your ears with hard covering. B is your kind of recreation helmet, and that's what we're focusing on here. But all of the helmets we talk about are certified for skiing and snowboarding.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the shell, that seems fairly obvious, as opposed to when we were talking about jackets, that really needed a bit more of an explanation. But what about some kind of understanding about the liner inside that shell in a helmet? Specifically, I'm interested in EPS and something that normally comes out as MIPS, I think.
Yeah, so EPS, expanded polystyrene. This is your classic. Think of most people are used to a cycle helmet. You've got this thin film or shell on the outside, and then the EPS is bonded in or injected in, made in different ways. Lots of ski helmets can be like that. Some ski helmets have a much harder outside, which we call hard shell. But that EPS foam on the inside, it can be made of other foams. That is your shock absorbing layer. That's what absorbs the impact if you take a tumble and reduces the force on your head, which is great if you're getting loaded, so the foam gets crushed. But what happens if you hit the ground at an angle? As often happens when you're skiing, you may slide down the hill. So this rotational impact, if you want, or oblique impact, is where the helmet hits the ground, the head's tilted, and we want to slow down how quickly the head is rotated, and that's what MIPS does. So MIPS stands for Multi-Directional Impact Protection System. A bit of a mouthful. This is typically a plastic layer between the EPS liner and your head, and it's attached to the EPS liner with little rubber bungees, and this just means your head's decelerating more slowly. It's not having the same force applied to it, that rotational force, when you take a fall. Now, actually, in recent seasons, we've seen this develop in different ways, and it's really exciting to see what's happening in this space.
Okay, well, we'll cover that when we move on to the products, because I think most of them do have these features in there. The strap's obviously pretty obvious. Key point, though, I think, is that it needs to be done up correctly. Otherwise, it's pretty pointless wearing a helmet. Right?
Now, most helmets will have a fit adjustment, a cradle inside the helmet that you can either use a dial or some kind of Velcro or fastener to tighten or loosen it for your head, and that holds it in place. But the strap is what keeps it on if you take it fall. Make sure it's adjusted properly, and it should go under your chin.
We're also going to, when we talk about the products, when we talk about venting as well, do you want to explain kind of why, I think people probably understand what venting is, but why it's important?
Yeah, I mean, you get really warm when you're skiing, but the other issue is that it can be really cold on the mountain. So ski helmets will have venting of some sort. So some will have more venting than others. Sometimes it's fixed in place, you can't adjust it, and that's called passive venting as well. Or you've got adjustable venting, which we also term active, where it has a slider so you can open and close the vents.
Right, that's going to be useful, because I've already read through and know what we're going to talk about with the products, and some of them have passive venting. So you're saying if you've got passive venting, then there's no option to change it. Adjustable, obviously, you can.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Something that I've seen out on the mountain, and they look quite weird to me. They look quite kind of alien like, or space age like, visor helmets.
Yes, so visors are slightly confusing term because you can get helmets with a peak or a brim, which sometimes get called a visor. But when we're talking about visor today, what we mean is where you have a lens attached to the goggle. Think about sci-fi movies and you've got a spaceman or fighter jet pilots. They have visor helmets. The visor slides down in front of their eyes. These are brilliant if you wear prescription glasses. But they've become really popular and really commonplace. And the visor can be attached in different ways. You can get different lenses. It's a really good combination, especially if you wear glasses.
Okay, and Recco is going to get mentioned a few times as well. I don't think we need to go into that now. Listen, if you want to find out more about the Recco and what that means, we really discussed it in a lot of detail in our ski jackets episode. But needless to say, it can help you if you get into trouble in an avalanche. Let's move on to sustainability. In all of these episodes, we've covered the innovations that we've been seeing in sustainability. What are the trends and the changes we're seeing in relation to helmets and goggles?
These products are predominantly made from plastics of some sorts, and the way that brands have improved the sustainability for these, dropped the environmental impact, is they're using a lot of recycled materials, and we are seeing brands using bio-based plastics. So in helmets, there's a Scandinavian company called Spektrum. I can't remember exactly where they're based, but they make a Brunner helmet. And this is amazing. It uses loads of bio-based and recycled materials. This is one of those helmets with Recco that you referred to before. And they claim it's the greenest helmet on the planet. Now, we see a lot of recycled materials being used, but this one uses it to such an extent, it just gives us a glimpse of where we're headed. And it's similar with goggles, bio-based plastics, recycled materials in straps, in frames, but we are seeing some biodegradable materials being used for lenses. So the lenses will have to be optically perfect, or as perfect as possible. So to see these materials where the plastic can break down naturally at the end of its life, matching the requirements they want, is amazing.
I think maybe harder to do that in this area with these products like helmets and goggles. You can think inherently they're going to involve a lot of plastic, but it's interesting to hear about the changes that are going on there.
Exactly. And one interesting innovation, so the EPS liner inside, that protective layer, that doesn't break down very quickly. So there are various companies, Bolle, people may have heard of as a big company. They put little pieces of cork within the EPS liner, and it's amazing how much quicker it breaks down because of these natural fibers being used.
Okay, well, let's move on to the products themselves then. So with the caveat that fit is king, what are your 5 picks of the best ski helmets for winter 2024?
Yeah, so looking at different price points, and I mentioned that because this first one is expensive. It's £410. Wow. There are a number of expensive helmets like this on the market, but this is by a company called Sweet Protection, and these are really kind of at the forefront of innovation with safety. So they work with MIPS, and they've developed a MIPS 2VI system. Go onto their website, look at it. There's so much going on. There's way too much to cover there, but it just enhances the safety of it. This helmet uses a pre-preg carbon layer for the outside, so it keeps it really slim, really hardware. It's really strong, surprisingly light, around 600 grams. It's just a real kind of top end, real techers helmet. It looks amazing. The cheaper version, you get this MIPS 2VI with the igniter, which I used quite a bit last year. That's a lot cheaper, around £230. But the Grimnir 2VI MIPS at £410 is a proper premium product.
Right. And, you mentioned in the notes you sent me earlier, we were talking about the venting side of things. So it's got 10 vents, which 10 are vents. All...
and they put a protective layer on these vents to stop things penetrating the vents. And I mean, they've gone full on with safety with this helmet. It's pretty impressive.
But the option that you were talking about, the igniter, the less expensive option, is that still made from carbon fiber as well?
No, it doesn't use the carbon fiber. So that's part. That pre-preg carbon is an expensive material to work with, and that's part of the cost developing that helmet for the Grimnir. That's part of why it sits at just over £400.
Okay, so that's right at the top of the market. Let's try and find something a little bit more affordable. What's next on your list?
So again, this is using a different adaptation of the MIPS system. So Giro is partnered with Bell, the same company. They make lots of different helmets for different sports, and they have their own lab in America. And with MIPS, they developed a new system called MIPS Spherical. So you've got your standard EPS liner, and that's like a socket, and then another foam and EPP liner under that, like a little ball system. So it's a ball and socket. And because MIPS is normally a hard plastic layer that just moves around or allows your head to, move around in an impact, this actually works to absorb impacts as well. It's an amazing technology. And the fact that it has such good venting, it's £250, so you're getting premium protection without a massively hefty price tag. The fit on this helmet, it's so comfortable. They make a lighter weight version called the Owen, which I actually use most of the time when I'm not testing other helmet, but the Tor's got more venting on it and will suit a broader spectrum of skiers. It's fantastic.
Okay. Slightly different price point from that then. The next one on your list is a head helmet. It should be.
Yeah, exactly. So head, they've done this for a few seasons, but it's just, I mentioned the comfort with the Giro, but they've got this sphere fit system on the inside of the head helmet. So there's essentially 4 variants. They do a Radar and Rachel, which is a visor version, and they do the same helmet without a visor called a Rev and a Rita, which are interesting names. But the Rachel and Radar is what we're focusing on. That's £200 with the visor. And lots of visors are on pivots, but this is attached on little bungees. So it's a bit like wearing a goggle. It's really comfortable. It's got a Cat 2 lens. So when we're talking about lenses a bit further, you'll learn what that means. But it just works for a lot of conditions, and you can pop the goggle up on your head. You can remove it and you can pop the lens up onto the top of the helmet. You can remove it and wear the helmet with goggles if you want. It's just really easy to service, really easy to swap lenses if you buy a spare, but it's sublimely comfortable. The fit all around your head is phenomenal.
And remind me what price that was?
£200. So this is an in-mold helmet, a bit like a cycle helmet construction. So it's very light. Lots of venting in there.
Okay. Next on your list then, what have we got next?
Yeah, so this helmet is a little bit different. At the start, we spoke of standards, and I said all of the helmets we're talking about are certified for skiing and snowboarding. This helmet carries more certifications. So it's certified for climbing as well. So if you're ski mountaineering, this helmet is a great option. But Salman also say that it's certified for cycling. Classic example, in Scotland, you cycle in to do a ski tour, you then go ski tour, and you might do a bit of climbing. This helmet is perfect, but it's one of the most vented helmets you can get. It's got fantastic ventilation in it. It's really light at 400 grams. I mentioned the Grimnir in carbon is about 600. It's 400 grams. You can use it for lots of different sports. You get a summer liner, so if you want to use it for climbing, it's got clips on there for head torches. Lots going on. Very light. very breathable, great venting, and just fantastic for matching a lot of different disciplines. You can have one helmet to use in the summer for climbing and cycling, on winter for all three.
When you speak about it like that, it makes it sound like incredible value. You could use it for all these different sports.
Yeah.
There obviously are elements that make it different, doesn't have as many features as some of those more expensive helmets. Like, for example, I think with the venting with this one, it's what you described earlier as passive venting. So
it's fixed venting in this. So again, it shares that construction as you would with a cycle helmet like in mold. It's called the Salomon MTN Lab or Mountain Lab. It's £155. There's various colorways. They do a fantastic kind of almost turquoise colorway in it. But actually the EPS liner inside it's not just the same thickness all the way around, but you can think of it kind of little mountains and valleys. Yeah, think of it like an egg box construction if you want. And these work like crumple zones. So it actually exceeds the European safety standard by around 30%, and then the amount of force that it can absorb. It's pretty impressive.
Okay, excellent. So that was £155. That's still quite expensive. What about an entry level type of helmet? What would you be?
Yeah, so there's a couple here, but the one I want to look at. So Oakley, people will know of. They make some amazing top-end helmets, but they do a helmet called the Mod 1. It's got very much a skater look. It doesn't have loads of venting in it. Really like boa fit. So we've spoken about boa fit and, with ski boots, but there's a dial at the back that cinches in the helmet around you. It's got a removable, washable liner and ear pads, and it's just got a great freestyle look. It's available in so many different colors, so you can really pick what's going to work best for the look that you've got. And on the freestyle scene, lots of people will run their goggle strap under the helmet, and this helmet looks really good like that. But it doesn't have a brim or a peak or anything. I mean, there's a Smith Holt, similar price, £80 instead of 85 for the Mod 1, and instead of being in mold, that's a hard shell, but that's a similar offering, but that's quite a bit heavier. This Mod 1's still nice and light on your head.
So that's really interesting, those different products there, and they sound great. I just wanted to ask you a question, because we said before, the most sustainable item is the one that you already have. Now, I've probably had my helmet for about 15 years. It doesn't have like as many of those features, but I've never kind of crashed in it. I've never hit it on anything. So do helmets have a natural life, or am I still safe, wearing this?
No, you need to replace the helmet. Yeah, the plastics break down. UV is pretty detrimental to the integrity of plastics, and helmets are made of plastics. Whether they're recycled or bio-based, they will get impacted by UV light. So that's one thing. And in the mountains, obviously, UV light is a big consideration. And just taking them to and from resort, they get squashed into luggage or bashed off airline seats as you're walking through the plane. Really, brands kind of look at 3 to 5 years for a helmet life cycle. So really, you're well outside of that. Your head is your most expensive or most valuable asset anyway. Look after it, get a new helmet.
Right. Well, I mean, that is really interesting, and you've motivated me there. So I will re-listen to this episode and also start to. I think I'll probably go into Ellis Brigham and try a few on, because, as you said, every head is individual. Let's move on to goggles then. We've already mentioned the sustainable aspects of it, but before we go into detail about the goggles, let's tackle some of the terminology, because there's a few things to tackle here. So, firstly, the reason probably we're wearing goggles is for UV protection. Do you just want to explain how that's identified?
Yeah. So the goggle offers protection in a couple of ways, not least from wind and snow hitting your face and getting cold, but impact protection, branches, whatever. But the most important thing is that we're going to stop bad UV light. So mainly UVA and UVB light getting to our eyes and damaging them. It's really detrimental. And in the mountains, the UV hits the snow, gets reflected, so you get exposed to more of it. Hence, when you're skiing, you get sunburn under your chin. A bit like sailing, it doesn't normally happen, but that's because it's getting reflected off the snow. It's a European standard, but actually everything we're looking at here is much higher than the standard requires it to be. So they're blocking almost all UVA and UV light. And sometimes this level of protection is referred to as UV 400. So it's blocking all wavelengths of light less than 400 nanometers.
Okay, so that's looking after, let's say, the health of your eyes. But the reason we're wearing goggles, as you say, to protect our face from the elements, let's say. But we need to be able to see through them. And most goggles, if you buy them now, they have a choice of lenses. Let's say a brighter lens and a darker lens. We can define what we mean by that, can't we, using a term called VLT?
Yeah, so the visual light transmission, VLT, essentially goes from 0 to 100. So 0 would be 0%, it's not letting any light through, and 100% VLT would be it's letting all light through. Anything that's at the upper end of that scale, so typically if it's 80% or over, that's really for your night skiing. That's a clear lens. And then as we come down through the range, the darker that it gets, it's more applicable for sunnier conditions. So in combination with VLT, you will see a lot of eyewear brands, goggle brands that we're talking about here, talk about category of lens. So there's 5 categories, category 0 through to category 4. There's not that many category 4s. If you're going to wear sunglasses, you can't actually drive in a category 4 lens.
Cool. Now, this isn't a technical question per se at all, but I think we've probably, if anyone who's skied, a reasonable amount, has been on the mountain and they've got a certain lens in, and then the light starts to shift and it goes to what we might call flat light or something like that. How do you decide? Here's a question for you to answer. How do you decide when the time has come to swap your lenses over?
So when we're talking about flat light, it essentially means that the terrain in front of you looks pretty flat. You can't tell where the lumps and bumps are. So that's why we're talking about flat light. When it's bright and sunny, you can see all the differences in the terrain ahead. So if you start to lose definition in the terrain ahead, you may want to swap down to a lighter lens, a lens that lets more light come through. Now, some people really like a pink lens, some people like a yellow lens. That's almost irrespective. What matters is that you go in the shop, you try them on, you'll know what works for your eyes. But more light through the lens, better definition. Also, the tinting of the lens, the way they handle color, will impact that.
And, to follow up on that point, I think a key thing if you are buying goggles is you need to have lenses that are easy to change. And I know we come onto the products, there's a lot of magnetic lens swap options these days. They are so much easier than trying to prise a lens out and put another one back in, which was more an old style type of thing. But I think that's really crucial, right?
Yeah, the magnetic lens swaps are great. When it first came out, people were just using magnets, and what would happen was people would crash and the lens would fly out. And in testing a few different goggles, I've been able to even just stood wearing the goggle to get the lens to fall out. So they've kind of updated the systems, put clips in, but even the modern pull apart. So when you just grab the top and bottom of the frame, pull it apart and the lens pops out, that's got easier as well. And some interchangeable goggles now just use that system because it is so easy. So whichever system you get, just practice using it at home before it comes to changing the lens in the mountains when the wind's blowing and you want to look after it.
So, lenses are made up of, several layers, and they have anti-fogging within there. But, occasionally you kind of get snow maybe or moisture that's got into the inside. What's the best way of dealing with that?
Yeah, and this is where lots of people become unstuck. So the lens stops fogging up because it's made of 2 layers, an outside and inside. So the inside layer is kept a bit warmer, like a double glazed window. So that helps stop it fogging up. But they also put a coating on the inside of the lens, the side closest to your face. Yeah. What's really important to understand about this, lots of anti-fog coatings soften when they are damp or wet. So the fog on it is moisture. So when it gets damp or wet, don't rub it with the lens cloth. The soft bag the goggle comes with is also for cleaning it. Don't rub that coating because you can actually rub the anti-fog coating off. If you get snow in it, take the goggle off, tip it upside down, give it taps to get the snow to fall out, and then let it dry naturally. Or if you do need to take the moisture out, dab at it with the lens cloth, but do not move the lens cloth around on the lens if you can avoid it at all.
Okay, that's really interesting. Right, let's move on to the products themselves then. I think you've picked out 4 for us. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so we're going to go price point from top to bottom again. I mentioned with the Oakley Mod 1 helmet that Smith do a great helmet at £80. This is the most expensive goggle we're looking at is by Smith. So it's the 4D mag and it's £320. I mean, you get a hard case, you get a goggle sock cover, which are great. If anybody's got goggles, get a goggle sock. They're about 12 quid. This lens is unlike any of the others that we're looking at. So just to talk tech on lenses, if I may, very quickly. So there's 3 essential shapes. A lens can curve side to side, like it's wrapped around a cylinder. So we call that cylindrical. A lens can curve up and down and around as though it's wrapped around a sphere, and we call that spherical. Or in some of the more modern lenses or the newer development in lenses, we have something called toric shaping, which is like a hybrid of the two. It's not curved quite as much top to bottom, but it's curved more sharply around your face because our faces are shaped like that. This lens then takes it another level. So it curves really sharply underneath the eyes, so in towards the bottom of the goggle. And they call this the bird's eye view. So you imagine the lens going down and then you sweep your hands in towards your cheeks. And that's exactly the shape of the goggle. And this means that you can really see what's happening just in front of your feet. But more importantly for me, when I'm testing this, doing up things like rucksack straps is so much easier when you can see straight down out the goggles. So it just kind of improves that field of view. But it's got their Chroma Pop lens. You get two lenses, one for bright sunny days and one for when it's overcast, flat light, like we spoke of before. Really comfortable, really interesting lens tech. The strap, instead of just wrapping over the helmet, has a clip at the back, so you can actually undo it and just pull it around the helmet rather than have to slide it over the top and do that up. But the Chroma Pop color tech they use on this, and we're going to talk about other color tech in other lenses, but the Chroma Pop just does that. It makes the colors pop, gives you great definition and clarity. It is expensive, but it's a premium product, and you do feel that difference.
Okay, so next up, I think around half of that price, but still getting you a very good goggle, is something from Dragon.
Yeah, so Dragon makes some super cool goggles, but they work with a lot of athletes. So there's a skier called Dennis Ranalter, and he's an amazing free ski athlete. So this is his signature model, but it's the PXV Vision. It's quite a big goggle. It looks cylindrical, but it is also slightly curved top to bottom. So it's a toric lens in this. And what I love about this goggle, it comes with two lenses. It uses Dragon's LumiLens tech and the smoke lens in this. So this is for those brighter days. It's a category 2 lens, almost category 3. So that tells you it's relatively dark. It makes your eyes feel so relaxed. It's absolutely beautiful to use, but it is quite a big goggle. Suits bigger face shapes, or if you want that big look, but it also gives you a fantastic field of view. It's not magnetic, unlike the Smith 4D Mag, where it's got magnets and clips. This one, you have to peel the goggle apart to swap the lens, but it does come with two lenses, and their LumiLens tech works brilliantly.
That's really interesting. But the next one on the list, the price isn't that different from the Dragon Dennis Ranalter that you just mentioned. It's something from Oakley.
Yeah, so that PXV goggle is £165, but this Oakley is £138. People may think of Oakley as being that premium price point, and they make some amazing, their Michaela Schifrin goggle is brilliant, but it's more expensive. They make some brilliant goggles. This is the Line Minor, and you can get it in a large version or medium. And I've used the Line Minors for a few seasons now, and you get that Oakley premium feel, but at a much lower price point. Also, there's little cutouts in the side of the frame. So with goggles, we can talk about OTG, and that means over the glasses. And that's exactly what these little cutouts are for. So if you wear prescription glasses, that allows the legs of your glasses not to be crushed by the frame. And it works brilliantly well. They do it in loads of different colorways, loads of lenses. The one that I really love is their Prism Sapphire Iridium lens. It's a category 3 lens. So it's 13% VLT. People remember back when we were talking about visual light transmission. So you know it's relatively dark. The coloring on this is amazing. I use it for ski touring, for general around the resort and on piste, and it just got a fantastic feel on your eyes. And what's really impressive for a category S3 is when the cloud does shift in, because it doesn't come with a spare lens. You can get other ones, but it doesn't come with one. When the cloud shifts in, I'm surprised at how well I can still pick out the variances in the terrain ahead.
I think you mentioned that earlier on when we were chatting about lenses. The Prism lens is the Oakley type of lens.
Yeah, so Prism is their color handling. Chroma Pop is Smith's. LumiLens is Dragon's. All brands have their own color handling. Don't fixate on that. I would urge people not to have tested it from pretty much every goggle brand, and everybody's top level color handling works brilliantly well. Try the goggle on. Your eyes will tell you if it feels right. Honestly, people may not believe me, but go and try a few different pairs on in a shop, and you'll soon know which ones feel good on your eyes.
Let's move on then to the final one in your list, which is an entry level model. What have you got there?
Yeah, because all of the three that we've mentioned so far are well over £100, up to over £300. This is £45. So it's by a company called Block. It's called the Block Boa. Nothing to do with the Boa dial that we've spoken about in ski boots or earlier with helmets. It looks really kind of cool. It's a black frame, silver lens. It's a category 2 lens, so works for most skiing conditions. You've still got triple layer face foam. You've still got a silicone lined strap, so that silicone lining just helps the strap grip onto your helmet, and it's just amazing value. It doesn't feel quite as premium as some of the more expensive ones, but that's no surprise. Very comfortable, great lens in there, but £45, that's amazing value.
Yeah, I'm busy thinking that for that, it might be, let's say, for example, your children need to have goggles, but they might be the sort of people who mislay things from time to time or drop them or whatever. Instead of investing hundreds of pounds into a pair of goggles, maybe this is the right sort of goggles for them, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, this is an adult goggle, but Block do loads of kids' goggles. My kids started in Block goggles, so I wasn't spending an absolute ton because that classic kids skiing down the hill, the goggles are flying, just hanging off the back of their helmet, getting bashed everywhere. But yeah, this is an adult goggle at £45, so great value. Or for teens, brilliant, great option.
That is brilliant, Al. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put links into the show notes to all of the helmets and the goggles that we mentioned here today. I think I just want to reiterate the point that Al made earlier. You know, fit is king, so you should definitely be trying before you buy. And I've got absolutely no problem recommending you go to Ellis Brigham. You know, I am saying that because they made this special episode of the Ski Podcast possible, but also because they are winter sports specialists. They got 16 shops around the UK, so you should be able to find one near you, and you can find all the kit you need for this winter. Now, I enjoy all feedback about the show. I'd like to know what you think, especially about our features like this and these special episodes. You can contact me at the Ski Podcast or by email theskipodcast@gmail.com. I did actually get a contact, I think this was via Twitter, from Sean Douglas, who listened to the Ski Boot episode and said it was really good listen to demystify a lot of that jargon. And I think, you know, so much of that is down to the way that Al has been able to help explain all of these bits and pieces. Listen, if you like the podcast, there are 2 things you can do to help. Review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That helps other listeners find us. You can subscribe so you never miss an episode. We actually have over 200 episodes to catch up with. And I had a quick look earlier. 161 were listened to in the last week. There is so much to listen to in our back catalogue. Just go to theskipodcast.com and search around the tags and categories. You're bound to find something of interest to you. Now, we will be back for our 5th and final equipment episode in a couple of weeks' time, covering the extremely important subject of how you keep your hands and feet warm, when we'll be looking at gloves and socks. You can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at the Ski Podcast. But for now, I'd like to thank Al for joining me and sharing all of his incredible knowledge. I personally found these equipment specials incredibly educational. After that jackets one, when I put on I've got an Arc'teryx jacket. I went out for a walk on New Year's Day, I think it was. And I found myself inspecting it and looking on that's the taping, isn't it? Oh, yeah, this is a shell. Oh, it's like a triple layer, isn't it? All these things I've learned from you. Al.
Sorry about that.
So thank you. Thank you so much for that and for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Oh, Iain, thank you. Honestly, hopefully this is just helping people get in the kit that's going to give them the best time in the mountains, because that's why we head out there.
Well, that's brilliant. And what a way to finish. So thanks a lot, Al. And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.